All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Dr. Anwar Youssef Dunbar, and this is Big Discussions 76, Science and Technology. Give me 1 second here. I'm going to alert the people over on my original channel that this stream is going on in case anyone over there wants to come over and listen in on what we're going to talk about regarding this important topic. Give me 1 second. Good morning to all of you on Facebook. Those of you who are curious about what I'm going to talk about. Let's see. Technology. Okay, there's me. All right, there's this stream. And let me share the stream. Okay, wow, I've got 4 likes over here already. So I'm going to share it. All right. So the people on my original channel have been notified. All right. So we'll go ahead and start because today is a double header. Around 1 o'clock, I plan to do an open basketball hangout over on my sports channel. And I'm seeing, give me 1 second here. I'm seeing my low signal icon. And whenever I see that, I like to wait for the signal to go back up. Let me take a look over on the YouTube side to see how I look. I don't look too granular. Okay, well, we're just going to go because, as I said, this is a double header for me today. Okay, so we're going to have a little science and technology discussion. I've got on my periodic table shirt. This is going to be more on the technology side. And coincidentally, I was just, as I was writing and working on projects this morning, I was listening to my Iron Man 1 and Iron Man 2 soundtracks in my iTunes library. And, Iron Man, if you watch the Marvel movies, that was Tony Stark's strength, was his technology and his knowledge of physics and engineering and those kinds of things. So today, what we're going to do is I am going to have a guest who actually I talked to over on my original channel. He's also interested in education, particularly for African Americans, and we discuss topics all the time via email. And this one I thought was particularly important because I want to grow this channel out, but also as we are encouraging more African American kids, boys and girls. We're not just pushing one gender here, as we're encouraging them to get this training in these STEM fields. For those of us who have gone to college and pursued white collar careers, we know that the financial part of your education is just as, if not more important than getting the degree itself, because you want to make sure you get a quality education, but you also want to make sure that you're not hamstrung on the back end. And so the cost of higher education is very, very important these days. Prophet of Thought is here. What's going on, brother Xavier? I saw your email earlier. My Outlook accounts, I currently can't respond. GoDaddy is working with me to troubleshoot those, but I did see it, and I will take another look back at it. But I will probably have to respond to you from a separate account, but I saw it. Okay. So thank you for stopping through, by the way. So Sheed is here. Thank you for being here, Sheed. Before I invite my guest up, let's see. As many of you know, this channel was taken down about 2 months ago, and Google/YouTube was nice enough and gracious enough to resurrect it. I think provided that I don't talk about certain things. So I always show this slide now to say that if you ever, if any of my channels ever go away, these are other places you can find me. That's my blogging platform at the top. That email address I just discussed with Brother Xavier. I can receive emails there right now, but I just can't send emails back out until this issue gets until it gets troubleshooted. There's a Big Words Blog Site Facebook page. That's my Twitter handle at Big Words Are Powerful, and that is my Instagram handle. There are also three other Big Discussion 76 channels. And before I bring Ray up, I just want to say that over on my main channel, we talked about this. Officer Charles Faulkner came over and we talked about the Gray Faulkner Initiative. And one of the things that he talked about, this is from the Gray Faulkner Initiative, the importance of particularly training boys up in the trades and the STEM fields. So again, that's kind of the impetus for this, is not just getting the STEM training, but also getting it in the most prudent way possible. And that in large part involves the financial aspect. So I'm going to bring Ray up. We're going to start this discussion, and we'll go from there. So good morning, Ray.
Good morning, Dr. Dunbar. How are you doing today?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well, and I appreciate you for bringing me on to discuss this important topic, because I do agree with you that we need to bring more of our students into the STEM fields and show them avenues of success in accessing these careers in a way that is affordable to them, as well as will allow in a way that will allow them to actually get the training that will position them for high income skill careers.
Okay. So our once again, everyone, our title for this is a discussion on for-profit tech colleges versus mainstream universities. Give me 1 second here. Okay. I'm going to have to, speaking of troubleshooting going forward, I'm going to have to figure out ways to upgrade my technology so that this this signal thing doesn't keep happening. But it worked fine yesterday. So Ray, I have some questions here, as you know. You saw them. So I think it'll be good to start with explaining and discussing the differences between for-profit universities versus the traditional universities. Can you talk a little bit about that for the layperson? Because honestly, I'm not familiar with the difference between the two, though I have seen numerous advertisements over the years for institutions like Strayer and ITT. But anyway, go ahead. Tell us a little bit about that.
I'd be glad to go over that with you. The for-profit institutions, usually they are businesses that help students to the businesses that have training programs. And some of the more advanced for-profit institutions have become traded on the NASDAQ and as well as the New York Stock Exchange. They're for-profit companies. They have shareholders. Their goals would be to maximize profits. The mainstream universities would be like you attended, the University of Michigan, Johnson C. Smith. And I also want to just digress real quickly to congratulate you on the excellent example of being a PhD from the University of Michigan. I was looking at the U.S. News and World Report, and I think that we really don't, we need to really acknowledge that out of the top public universities, the University of Michigan is number 3. So we have a gentleman here, a brother here, who has a doctorate degree from the number 3 university, public university in the U.S. And that's something that we should be proud of and that we should be really gung-ho about, because you had to do a lot to get there, to get through that. And I just wanted to commend you on that. So the
Okay,
for-profit square.
Before you go ahead, well, thank you, Ray. I really, really appreciate that. And for those of you who haven't watched it, I did a live stream a couple of weeks ago where I read my essay, or I read an essay that I wrote about that entire process, not necessarily the experiments, but all of the knowledge and that I had to learn about the craft and just learning how to work in the craft successfully, because science is a craft like basketball or like music or like archery, martial arts. Science is a craft. Science and technology are crafts. So, and the other thing with it, for individuals looking to go the route that I did, or maybe someone else, it's always cool when your institution is ranked high on U.S. News and World Report, but also for that department that you're going to, that you're interested in, make sure you do the research on that department as well, because while the university itself may have a national ranking, all of the departments, for example, I was in the Department of Pharmacology, all those within themselves have their own rankings and their own criteria. But anyway, go ahead.
Well, yeah, I'm glad to, and we need to assert the brothers who are making some positive moves like you did. And so when we talk about the mainstream universities, they usually have scholars who are major researchers. They're usually funded privately or by a state. They have a canon of knowledge or information that is reviewed by other people who are competent in the areas. And so what has happened on that, there's a sister that wrote a book called Lore Ed. She's a professor at Harvard University named Dr. Cotton, where she was saying that, and if you don't mind, you can show that information as well, where what's happening, many African Americans are trying to get into technology because we understand that that is the wave of the future. And what's happening is that since a lot of the mainstream universities are not really reaching out the way they should, and working with a lot of the urban school systems to develop the skills early from elementary school, the math skills, the science skills, and even the reading comprehension and writing skills that you would need to be a STEM professionals, what has come in the gap is that these for-profit colleges are really good at selling the dream. They are in a lot of the Black neighborhoods, saying that you could be a tech professional this, a tech professional that. But what has happened, they have basically ensnarled a lot of Black students with debt, with the so-called degrees that are not transferable to mainstream universities, that do not give you the higher level skills. Now, a lot of the skills are lower level skills where you can get into help desk type work, quality assurance work. But if you're trying to be a systems network architect, if you're trying to do a senior software developer, all of these things that take a solid math and science background, you're more than likely not going to do that. But they're implying through that these are some schools like, some of them are now defunct, like ITT Tech, American Intercontinental, DeVry, and a lot of what's the Remington College. A lot of these schools that are, put themselves in a nice office park. They present themselves as a major university, and they spend the majority of their money on advertising. So the people who are attracted to that actually think that they're coming in to learn to become an engineer, but when they're recruited or when they go to a company, they'll find themselves in a very low tier training program. They're not going to be recruited by some place like Accenture, Ernst & Young, Deloitte Technology, Dell Technologies at the higher levels. Now, they may come in at a lower level, but when you look at these people who are these IT consultants working for Epic, working for SAP, working for these major firms, they're not recruited there. And what we really need to do is direct our people to say, if you really want to be a systems engineer that could be on the track to be a director of information technology for a city, for a school system, you do want to go the mainstream route, because a lot of those school systems especially want formal education. They want at least a master's degree or an advanced degree in some area. And those are the things that will require you to have a solid grounding in math and science, or at least in business computer information systems at that point. So those are some of the things I wanted to kind of direct toward.
Okay, so it sounds like, so what kind of degree do these institutions confer upon the students who enroll? Are these some sort of certification? Is it an official bachelor's? Is it an official master's? What do they get there?
They usually have applied associate degrees, applied science or applied technology degrees. They do have for their tiers on that, but they're not transferable to a place like the University of Michigan, Georgia Tech, Virginia Tech, definitely not Caltech, definitely not Stanford, University of Texas, Texas Tech, Michigan Tech, any of the premier technology schools or the premier universities, but they are, in my view, misrepresenting themselves to poor and lower income Black students that, hey, you can go to DeVry and you're going to get the same opportunities as someone that went to Georgia Tech. And that's not true. The pipeline and the network of Georgia Tech is totally different. And they're the ones that would manage the people. They're the ones that would be the senior and the directors and things of that nature. And so because these schools could do a better job of really reaching out to these students, I'm talking about our mainstream schools, these for-profit schools are advertising in lower income, poor Black communities. So when you're getting on the subway somewhere, you may see DeVry, become a systems engineer. You may see ITT Tech, you may see Strayer, you may see the University of Phoenix, and all of these programs are for-profit institutions. Their goal is to make a profit for their shareholders. And many times what has happened is they have not delivered on that. These schools have been sued by the Federal Trade Commission. Some of them are now, they've been sued by the Judge Advocate General of the various military units, because a lot of vets go out and you can't, or the Department of Defense did sue them, and they're utilizing these schools. And many times these schools have not delivered. They've taken a lot of money. These schools are trying to charge what a Harvard or MIT charges, but they are not Harvard. They're not MIT. They're not going to push you up the way at Harvard or University of Michigan. They're, just like or West Point, just by a lot of times, and you'll know this in the industry, just by being a University of Michigan alum, you're going to get consideration in almost anywhere that you go. Now, if you said that you're a DeVry, and I'm not trying to knock these schools, but if you say you're DeVry, University of Phoenix, in the serious business arenas, they're not taking those schools real serious. If you're talking about, if I hear about a PhD from the University of Michigan, then I've got to answer that call and find out what is it that you want to talk about. But if you hear somebody that's gone to some of these for-profit schools that have taken more advantage of them, and then they're working at, and nothing wrong with being a network help desk or quality assurance analyst and making money at that tier, but you're not going to necessarily be recruited by the major technology consulting firms. You're not going to be tracked up to be by Oracle to be a Oracle principal consultant. And this is where you get into these six-figure jobs. And this is where we're looking to find more Black Americans to get into that. And so that's why there's a confusion, because they are selling this as though you're equivalent to the University of Michigan, and you're not the equivalent to the University of Michigan. You're not equivalent to Virginia Tech or any of these premier, or Caltech, any of these premier schools.
MIT.
And we really go MIT, yeah. And a lot of times, I'm not trying to sound, someone from MIT, I wouldn't say they would laugh at somebody coming out of some of these schools, but they wouldn't take you seriously about coming out of these schools. And that's why a lot of those students are trapped at the lower tiers of IT. They start out as a quality assurance analyst. They start out as a help desk clerk, and they may be doing that for the rest of their careers. That's not where you would go if you want to be the chief technology officer for a city or a county or for a state, for a hospital system. Since the public sector does give Blacks more opportunities, since they are more level playing field, those are the areas that you would go into. But a lot of those schools are just not doing the right thing for a lot of students.
Okay, you just said a lot there. If you're new coming in, please like the stream. The engagement definitely helps. If you don't like the stream, you can dislike it as well. That helps as well. A couple of things. I'm not sure I said this here, but when I graduated from my HBCU, Johnson C. Smith University, one of my aunts actually did. I know that I wrote about this. One of my aunts actually did ask me, what are you going to do with a bachelor's degree from Johnson C. Smith University? Who's going to know about that outside of North Carolina and maybe the Southeast? So that was one of my motivations to going to the University of Michigan. And I remember one of my professors, I'm not saying I didn't think a school like Meharry Medical was top rate, but in my mind at that time, I was thinking that I need to go to some place like the University of Michigan, one of the Big Ten schools or something like that. So that was one of my motivations for going. And I think that what's important about what we're talking about is that these messages are important because, as I've described in my content before, there are whole families and communities who don't know the difference. There are whole families and communities who've never heard of MIT. There are whole families who've never heard of Michigan Tech or, Georgia Tech because of the basketball team. But there are just whole communities who don't know and assume, as you said, that because I go to DeVry or ITT, that'll put me up in a very, very comfortable career at some point. So this is important knowledge to be disseminating out. I think that's all I wanted to say. Now, the other thing, I'm going to throw this little plug in here. Over on my original channel, we did do I did a stream on the low level of reading proficiency for Black boys in the United States. Shout out to Dr. Tiasan Johnson. And whenever that subject has come up, I've written in people's chats that no reading, no STEM, no financial sector. So one of the building blocks of being able to do science or engineering or technology is being able to open up a book and read. So I try to say that as often as possible. Okay, right. So we have a video here. What was there something else you wanted to say before we show the video?
Yeah, let's review the video then. I think that'll go over some points on that pretty well.
Just before we show the video, I had a question here. What got you interested in this topic originally?
Well, a lot of the people on YouTube, and they have really good intentions on helping us. I saw them immediately, and what's the BGS was saying this, and also Art News Store was saying that they were limiting the aspirations of a lot of these kids by saying you don't have to go beyond high school. You don't have to, quote, go to college. You can get your certificate, but that is also limiting their career development. So you have a lot of information because we don't have enough black male, especially black male college graduates as it is. And when kids who are kind of on the bubble, who are a little bit, I wouldn't say scared, fearful about the toughness of getting through a major engineering program, studying computer systems engineering or information technology, they'll go ahead and say, well, I don't need to do that because someone on YouTube told me you don't even have to go to college and you can make six figures in IT and you can get you one certificate. So when Art talked about that and BGS talked about that, that kind of encouraged me to do more of the research. And we had been writing on that. And we found out that the people that had been most victimized by these schools had been poor black students. And so that's what motivated me to get into writing about that.
Okay. And I think another takeaway message here is that not all degrees are the same. The truth is not all PhDs are the same. They're not all, while this is going to be a little bit controversial, while everyone wants to tout their doctor title, they're not all the same. The skill sets are not all the same. The amount of rigor is not all the same, and the things that that student is empowered to do are the things that student is empowered to do are not the same for every degree, every doctorate, every master's, whatever. So that's something people need to keep in mind. And the other thing is, when you're thinking about this, when you're thinking about education and scholarship, shout out to Art Newstall, you almost have to think about 2 to 3 steps ahead. So you want to get the degree, but where do you want to be after you get the degree? And as Ray said, you're more likely, if you attend the University of Michigan or MIT or Stanford or Virginia Tech, you're more likely to be placed in one of the higher tier companies, positions, whatever it is you want to do. You're just by association and coming out of those departments, you'll be placed higher automatically. For the most part, that might not have been the best way to say that, but let's see. Okay, so I'm going to queue up the video. All right, let me read this comment from MLR. MLR says, most Black students are not prepared properly coming out of most public schools because their preparation does not meet the rigor that major universities require. Yes. I know some people consider Dr. Thomas Sowell to be a coon. Some people don't like him, but he's written about that the public schools, K through 12 in the United States, need to get back to the basics of reading, writing, and arithmetic, and not so much all the other stuff that's being taught now. And just keep in mind, again, without the ability to do those two things, to read, comprehend information, and at least to do math, even at a basic level, you're not going to get a STEM degree anywhere. So, all right. And that's why the low level of proficiency for Black boys, the low reading level, that's why that's so egregious, because they're locked out. Okay, so fair use. This is from PBS YouTube. This is from PBS. So we're going to watch this. This is entitled, ITT Tech Students Are the Newest Victims of For-Profit Education Failures. Fair use.
This has been a tough fall in the world of for-profit colleges and for some of the students who attend them. The latest case, the bankruptcy and abrupt shutdown of ITT, one of the largest for-profit technical schools. Its 130 campuses were closed last month after the Department of Education said it could no longer enroll new students who relied on federal loans and grants to attend. The Obama administration cited problems with its accreditation and concerns that it was misleading students. That has left about 35,000 students up in the air over their future. And it is the subject of our weekly segment on education, Making the Grade. Paul Fain of the news site Inside Higher Ed joins me now. So tell us, first of all, why is ITT shutting down? How important are they in the pantheon of the for-profit school system?
They're one of the biggest, one of the oldest, most established for-profit companies with campuses in 38 states. They used to have campuses in 38 states. So definitely one of the most important.
Hold on. So once again, fair use, fair use. If anyone wants to make a donation to the channel, my Cash App and PayPal are below. I don't have a super chat over here, but for the sake of YouTube, fair use.
Important players. Several tough years, hemorrhaging students and revenue. And then they got hit with several investigations and lawsuits, federal and state, some serious charges. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the SEC, both pursuing them legally. And then you had an accreditor raising questions about their record keeping. And the feds finally said too much risk for both students and taxpayers and introduced several sanctions that were really the end for the company.
So what about those 35,000 students? What do they do?
They're a real tough bind. They have two major choices. First, they can elect to have their debt forgiven. They can, all of the aid that they had received, the loans, they can have forgiven by the federal government. But if they do that, their credits don't transfer. If they seek to continue their program somewhere else, which might be tough as is, they might not be able to find an option or a similar program.
Fair use, fair use. I just want to remind everyone that when you think about higher education of any kind, there is a business aspect. What I'm gleaning from this is that for these particular institutions, the business aspect is much more significant in addition to the actual education aspect. So,
and nearby, those credits don't count if they take the payout. And who's the demographic that goes to these schools? Well, you're looking at working adults, basically. Often the first in their family to go to college, many veterans at ITT and some other for-profits, and really just working adults looking to advance themselves, maybe to break into a career, maybe to get a credential so they can get out of a low-paid job. Folks who are working at night, weekends, to try to really advance themselves. It wasn't easy for them to try to get this route, and now they've put in all this time, and if the credits don't transfer, they might be back at square one. Absolutely. I mean, no matter what you think of ITT, you have to feel sorry or really concerned about these students, because for a lot of them, really just trying to get ahead, to really advance themselves.
Okay, and put this in context. This isn't the first school. This is just the latest school in the for-profit world that's had problems. We heard about Corinthian a while back, and there's been other schools as well.
Correct. Corinthian was even larger, 72,000 students. A couple of years ago, it shut down. Now, what remains of it in different owners' hands is only about 10,000 students. A few years ago, about 1 in 10 students in America were at for-profit institutions. That's declined to about 6% of the total. So really an existential crisis for these companies. And there's a lot of reasons for that. But it's not clear what the future is for for-profit higher education.
Is it the business model? I mean, is that working anymore? I mean, you used to see ads nonstop on TV.
fair use, fair use. Peanut Butter Hero. Ray, I'm just breaking this up to try to get the fair use thing in there just in case. I know this is PBS, but with YouTube, you never know. I'm going to read a few of these comments before we keep going. Let's see. M7B says, so basically clout comes into play into higher learning. Who measures the clout and how does it not turn into a good old boys club? That's interesting. Well, MB7B, you have to, let's see. So in the case of the STEMs, you have to look at where the research dollars are. And so, for example, your Big Ten universities, MIT, Virginia Tech, those are considered major research institutions. And so your your big tech companies, your pharma companies, your biotech companies, your aerospace and weapons companies. Those are the hubs they're going to go to recruit new talent. And those, so it's in large part the research dollars and the reputation that those institutions bring with them. And Ray, you can chime in if you want. Peanut Butter Hero says, is Umar School also known as Distressed Building, a for-profit school? I don't know enough about what Umar has been doing. I've heard a lot over the years, but I don't know enough to know to comment on what he's doing. I know he wants to start a school for boys. I think that's very important, but I don't know enough about what he's doing to speak on it in a meaningful way. Let's see. MB7 says, into with higher learning. Kareen says, I had to do remedial writing when I went to college because my writing skills were lacking, something I've always struggled with. My math and science skill were excellent, but writing is lacking. Okay, Purdue Global is another one. I've been seeing the commercials. Shonda says, good morning. Thank you for being here, Shonda. Thank you for being here, Alonzo. Extended clips. And thank you. Okay. Yeah, MB7B. Yeah, no problem. When I was pursuing graduate school, one of the things my professors at Johnson C. Smith University, the ones who were knowledgeable on it, said, if you're going to go to an institution, make sure they have research dollars to pay for you. And they make sure they have the research dollars to do the experiments that you want to do. Anyway, back to the video. Fair use. We're almost done.
At late night, and it was competitive. I mean, it was DeVry and ITT and Phoenix Online, and right, there were so many different opportunities.
And they were booming. I mean, you had massive growth coming right after the recession as folks dropped out of the economy and were really trying to retool themselves, and these schools reached out to them. They tended to be better than their competitors when it comes to advertising because they have the money to do that. But several factors have hit them. I mean, first of all, the recovery has recovered a little bit. So you have fewer folks looking to go back to school to try to find a job. You have just waves of bad publicity, investigations, criticism by the media, by lawmakers, primarily Democrats, which I think has taken a toll. I think the word for-profit has a bit of a stigma, and that's the companies themselves will say that. And I just think it's a harder sell. A lot of them are a little bit more expensive than community colleges. They say they offer more services to help.
Fair use. Ray, just breaking it up one more time. We're almost done. MLR says, to be transparent, those research dollars are also being funded by the federal government as well. That's exactly right, especially in the biomedical sciences. A major part of being a professor at an institution like the University of Michigan is writing grants and securing the funding. Shout out to Nicole Ali. She's talked about that quite a bit in her content. Absolutely. Fair use. We're going to finish this off.
Help students, but it's a little harder to get someone to pay $15,000 or more to go to one of these programs.
But what do the executives at these companies say about their plight and how the environment's changed?
Well, first of all, they say they've been treated unfairly, that this administration and Senate Democrats have cracked down on them more than the rest of higher education. There are questions about all of higher education's return on investment, the value of a degree. I think it's quite clear that the best way to get a job is to get a degree. But people are concerned about student debt on the whole. But for-profit higher education has really received, I think, the first wave of aggressive federal policy to try to make sure that students are getting what they pay for.
Paul Fan of the news site Inside Higher Ed. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Fair use. All right. So, Ray, so we're at 40 minutes. Do you want to give some reaction to what hold on.
Welcome, everybody.
Do you want to give some reaction to what we just watched?
Yes, I'd like to. Do you also have still the email information? Are you able to load that? And we can go over some of that info if you don't mind, and I can go over the details with our audience if that's something that you will be able to load.
So you're asking me, you want me to open up the entire email?
Yeah, and then we can go over that documentation because it goes over all of the documentation, and we can just go over it quickly, and I can just read different points of it from there. And that way we
Sure.
can see that if you're okay with that.
Yeah, hold on. Let's see. Okay. Here it is. Can you see that?
It's coming up. Yes. So when we talk about that, if you go down a little bit, it'll show on that how these for-profit colleges have targeted students. If you go down a little bit more, it'll show the part where they're advertising in Black communities. If we'll go ahead and be able to read that part of it. Let me just find mine on my own, and I'll just read that part if people want to look at that. Give me just a second.
Okay. Again, once again, everyone, if anyone wants to make a donation to the channel, my Cash App and PayPal are below. I think she put those in earlier. I appreciate that, Sheed. I'll drop those in the chat as well. I think this is very valuable information that Ray is sharing with us.
So it does say on that, and I'll just go over it quickly. It does say that for-profit college, DeVry University paid $100 million in fines to the U.S. Federal Trade Commission in a fraud settlement. Then it'll say right after that, if you're watching television and looking at billboards in Black communities, you may notice that for-profit schools advertise aggressively in urban areas. Cleverly, their message always feature people of color and are targeted to individuals looking for a way out of dead-end jobs. And so there's this woman named Professor Tressa McMillan Cotton. She wrote the book Lower Ed, The Troubling Rise of For-Profit Colleges in the New Economy. And she talked about how these colleges give the image that they are trying to advance people, but they ensnarl people in debt. These colleges, a U.S. Senate committee found out that if you go down a little bit further, it'll show that they spend most of these for-profit colleges spend most of their revenue on advertising. That most of the tuition students pay for at for-profit colleges is used for advertising, and only 10% is used for instruction and educational resources. It also says that students that graduate from these for-profit colleges have a less opportunities in the job market. So they're selling all these concepts, and this is ITT Tech, DeVry, University of Phoenix, American Intercontinental University, and others that are out there, Remington College, all of these schools. And this is not just to knock these schools, but the point of it is that these students are earnestly trying to advance themselves. They're earnestly trying to do like you did. They're trying to go and do what they're saying at a University of Michigan, but they haven't been prepared. And another thing I did want to add, Dr. Dunbar, the way you did it is one of the most successful tracks. You went to an HBCU, got grounded, your foundation there. That this happens all the time. I hear about women going to Spelman, going to Duke Medical, going up to Yale, getting a PhD. You hear about Morehouse men. You hear about Tuskegee men. You hear about people from Prairie View. So going to an HBCU, if you really want to be, because they're going to take the time to get you there. If you want to be an electrical engineer, you're going to have a better chance starting out at North Carolina A&T, Prairie View A&M, Florida A&M, Southern U A&M, getting it there, and then you can go to another major school and get your master's degree, and you're pretty much going to be solid in a career. But going to these for-profit schools, they're selling it, but none of your credits are going to be, you're not going to go to a grad school on the level of University of Michigan. You're not going to even get into a mid-tier grad school. They do not accept their credits. And so the point is that you're going here and you may go to a second fake college or fake for-profit college to get another fake degree, but in industry, it's not respected. This is why when you have people coming out of Texas A&M, Texas Tech, Georgia Tech, Cal Tech, Stanford, UC Berkeley, UCLA, the various top tier schools, Indiana University, they're the ones who are managing everybody. they're the ones that become directors of information technology. They're the ones that become the project managers. If you're talking about for the cities, these major, government organizations, they're going to be the director of the IT department. They're going to be these things. And so the concept has been to we always want to advance ourselves, but what we have to do is be careful not to be ensnarled. And I don't mind brothers coming on YouTube and saying they want to teach us, but who is seeing what the competency levels of Jimbo on the internet is in teaching IT? But we do know if you go to a community college and Microsoft has a program that they're sponsoring, and you have a Microsoft sponsored certified instructor with a master's degree, and they're tracking you to work on Azure for a office in that location, then you can be confident of that. But Jim Bob and them on the, Jimbo and them on YouTube saying that they are a software engineer, they're going to teach you all this. They may be competent in it, but whose credential are you going to take? Gwinnett College or, Gwinnett Tech College or, so-and-so, Mountain View Technical College, or a lot of these that are accredited by the state, that are sponsored. They have professors with master's degrees. They have the companies saying that this is what we need. We're paying you to train our people into this. So when BGS and Art New Store were talking about that motivated me to get into this, because we're misleading these kids down the round road. And BGS was saying that, why would you want to limit these kids' aspirations? What if one of these kids wants to be a doctor? So you don't want to emphasize that they need to get all their math skills in elementary school, in middle school, in high school. So what if they want to be a doctor of dental surgery, a doctor of medicine, PhD, a doctor of science, doctor of philosophy? They need a certain grounding and back foundation to do those things. And if you don't give them everything they need in elementary school, middle school, and high school, you basically put them at a great disadvantage that they may not be able to overcome. And so those are some of the things that I did want to discuss on that.
Okay. I want to thank MLR for the Cash App. Much appreciated. Thank you. Let's see. Okay. So, Ray, so we're almost at 50 minutes here. Let's see. Look at my questions. What are some of the, in summary, based upon what we've talked about, before I get into that, I just want to say that for transparency, the educational route that I took, I didn't plan it on the front end. I wanted to attend an HBCU, and I figured out how to be a student, and I buckled down when I got there. And I think, as Ray described, I was the beneficiary of those small classes and the teacher-student interactions. So it's cool. It's fine to want to get your bachelor's degree from a University of Michigan or a University of Wisconsin or a UCLA, but depending upon where you are when you enter that university, you might get lost because the classes are so big, and you might have to work hard to have those relationships with the teachers, and those relationships with the teachers and the professors. That's going to be a major component of you getting into your next step, whether that's graduate school or that's medical school, engineering school. So there is something, in my opinion, to be said for having those smaller class sizes and forming those relationships with your professors. So in many ways, it was advantageous for me to go to Johnson C. Smith and then go to the University of Michigan. So, and actually, once I got to the University of Michigan, many of my classmates, there were 66 of us in that first biomedical sciences class. Many of them were from smaller schools that I never heard of before. So a lot of students are taking the small school route and then going to the bigger schools. So it's not, in summary, it's not about going to the bigger school first. It's often setting yourself up to go to the bigger school, but getting that foundation first. So, right. So of all the things we talked about today, what are some of the takeaways? Unless there was more you wanted to add, what are some of the takeaways from what we talked about today?
The basic takeaway is that there are really no shortcuts on it. You got to get that foundation. It is like building a house, you know, and for those of us in the faith community, you have to build that foundation. And that foundation is having a solid educational background, starting from elementary school, engaged parents or engaged communities, and you're just not going to shortcut it. And the shortcut from these, for-profit schools have actually put people in a bad situation to where they're more in debt. They're not working at the level. A lot of times you can see some people get into college debt and they make such a high income, they can service that debt over 10, 15 years and they're doing okay. But a lot of these schools, that's why the government sued those schools and forgave those loans. And it's targeting a community. So there are no shortcuts. You got to do the work. As you said, at certain schools, you're going to have a better chance of starting at a good HBCU where they want you to succeed. If you're sitting in this classroom, a chemistry class, and I've seen it with 500 students, you're not going to get the same attention if there are 25 students in that class. You know, where the instructor knows you, where you can go talk to that instructor, where if there's a problem, because you're going to be taught by a PhD candidate or at least mentored by a PhD candidate who's already overwhelmed. They don't really like to teach. They have to do it as a part of the program. So they even though they're making their money getting their PhD, they really don't want to deal with students, especially at the freshman level, maybe at the junior and senior level. But at that freshman level, if your first chemistry class is in college and you're at a big school, like the University of Wisconsin, that's the wrong place to be. If your first chemistry class is at Xavier, they may go the long route to give you the foundation. And then at the end of that, you'll take that next step and you'll take your, general chemistry, organic, and find yourself in dental school. So that's the main thing. There are no shortcuts. They're selling this as a shortcut, but people end up in more debt. They're not able to access the six-figure jobs, and they're kind of pigeonholed by these companies when they go in there and kind of in the dungeon of IT and the dungeon of technology.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so I think in general, we want to help our kids avoid this, which is that ball and chain signifies debt. Same thing with this picture here. We want to avoid as much of this as possible. So it's important to, it's not just about going to college, but it's also about understanding the process and understanding that it is in large part a business. Higher education is a business. One of the things, even the University of Michigan and Wisconsin, they're all advertising this all the time. They just so happen to have football teams that they can do that with. And if you watch those games, for example, you'll see commercials running during the timeouts and in between quarters, advertising their schools. So my alma mater is no different. They just happen to have a football team that millions of people are watching, and they can run commercials in the middle. But they also have lots of donors and endowments that I don't think these for-profit institutions have as well. So it's a business. That's what I'm trying to say. Everybody, when you think about higher education across the board, it's a business, but you want to make sure you're getting what you need in a fair and equitable way out of the transaction. Go ahead, Ray.
You're correct. It's a business, and like you say, they have the money, but they get the results. Whereas these other places, if you look at that where it says about American Intercontinental University, the acting president put a lawsuit against the school because they felt guilty about putting these students in, because some people have a conscience. They're selling this opportunity when it's not what it is. And so you had people who ran the academic program, the acting president of that school, and we've had people that have graduated from that school telling people that they don't need to go, or implying that you don't need to go to a traditional school. Go to a traditional school. If you got to start out at community college, do that. Take your time and let those resources work for you. Because there's no shortcut. That's all I'm saying. Just like when you are training yourself, if you want to, uh, become a bodybuilder. They're the people that use their human growth hormones, they have other problems. But if you take your time and build up over a period of time, you can get your goals. But this is why you don't have enough of these people who are at the levels that they need. And IT is growing and growing, but we're not there because these people have sold our people a bad product. They're telling them they're looking at the emotions that a lot of blacks want to, and they don't have the admission requirements as well. They watered these things down. They have no admission requirement. And what happens, people even fail out of that, because most of the times they will test your math skills. And so you'll go through these programs, they've watered it down, and then the company will give you a basic diagnostic test to sound out what your skills are. So you don't pass that test, you don't get in. So they get back on the help desk when they were trying to get skills to advance to become a systems engineer. So it's predatory out there. And that's what I wanted to say. It's not the people who are getting victimized by this. They were trying to do the right thing. They're trying to get an education. They're trying to advance themselves. But go to what you've seen work. I've seen people come out of Prairie View at A&M at 23 years old and be offered $60,000 by Lockheed Martin. First job. Now tell me a 23-year-old making $60,000 is not doing no debt. Getting scholarships from these schools. You can go through ROTC, study civil engineering, work for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. If you come out of that type of background, who's going to deny you when you're out there? You're saying you built hospitals, roads for the U.S. Army throughout the world, and now you're bidding on a contract to build roads for a city. You got a background on that, so that's like it. There's no shortcuts. We got to do the work. We've got to raise our kids so that they have confidence in themselves. We got to support them through the process, just like these other groups are doing. We're throwing these kids out there basically to the wolves. If you have not been prepared for these big 50,000 student schools, and a lot of these schools are gigantic, 30,000 students, and you got to just getting through the campus is a big deal. But you can go to a certain school where it's a nice small campus. Most of the students know each other. They help each other. It's a friendly competition. But at graduation at Xavier University, they've gotten into medical and dental schools throughout the U.S. every year, in and out. So those are some of the things I did want to discuss.
Okay. So Ray, I see Art Newstall's here. Peace to Art Newstall. And who's an advocate of scholarship. Let's see. You said to Shonda, great to learn about SU. In addition, attorney Dennis Sperling is a graduate of Southern University Law Center. And I think Shonda said, good morning to everyone. And then she said she was there when Dennis Sperling was at Southern's Law Center. That brother has been on point for a long time. Yep, I tune into what he's talking about most every day. Citizen Lou says, interesting because I know a lot of people with great careers from DeVry. So, okay, so it sounds like some people have been able to establish great careers with that training. And I don't know that we're here to necessarily write it all off, but just to keep people aware of the ups and downs of this particular avenue. Okay, so we're right at an hour. I have as I said, I have a double header today. I'm going to just briefly throw the link in the chat if anyone else wants to come in and say something. I saw Art Newstall was there. So I'm going to throw the link in. If anyone wants to come up, we'll go on for another 10 to 15 minutes, but not much longer. So the link is there. If anyone wants to come in. So Ray, do you know examples of people who have, started careers from these institutions and who've done somewhat well?
You're talking about from the for-profit schools?
Yeah.
If you're talking about the lower tier, you can be a quality assurance engineer, help desk analyst, go tier 1, 2, 3. If that's what you want to do, that's going to be that. I can see if you consider that a good career. But if you're trying to be director of information technology, if you're trying to be a chief technology officer, I don't tend to see people recruited. And a lot of companies, our company, we don't pay for the tuition reimbursement for profit schools. We'll do it for mainstream schools, but we don't do the tuition reimbursement for profit schools.
Okay, I think Art Newstall, you're up first, and then we'll get Citizen Lewin.
Oh, okay, yeah, because I just got at the tail end. Yes, yeah. So, Ray, I'm not forgetting you, fam. I haven't done any collaborations in a while. I've been pretty busy, so I just been doing last minute live streams. But we're gonna hook up. But yeah, I'm just looking at the title. That's the main thing that I've been looking at because a lot of people, and maybe you said this already, but a lot of people do these pay for profit schools, and then when things don't work out, they give these stories that it's all colleges that do these fraudulent things. And I think did you mention that they were still under a lot of lawsuits and things for abusing student what do you call it, enrollment and things like that, and getting them trapped in all these little deals that they can't get out of. I'm not sure if anyone covered that. The made for profit colleges.
Yes, sir, Art. We did do that. We played Dr. Dunbar played a PBS script that showed a short film from PBS that showed how these for-profit colleges were entrapping people in debt. They got sued by the Federal Trade Commission. They like ITT, which just basically sued out of business because they had 130 campuses and they were sued for fraud. DeVry was sued for fraud for $100 million by the Federal Trade Commission. The Department of Defense has sued a lot of these colleges because a lot of military vets use these colleges, and now they're not able to use them because they have just been flat out, fraudulent. So as you said, and as Dr. Dunbar was saying, I got inspired to write on this by listening to you and BGS talk about the importance of formal college education, that don't limit the aspirations of these students by saying that you don't have to get a certain degree. And like you said,
Right.
They were trying to conflate that a degree from DeVry or ITT is equivalent to a degree from Georgia Tech or the University of Michigan, and that's not true. The University of Michigan is a premier research university, number 3 top public university in the U.S., world renowned, and people are not. They have been targeted by these schools, these advertising for in Black communities and urban communities to sell that dream, but they victimize more people than they help.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm say this last thing, and I had to go in the store because it's gonna give me bad reception. But I've been always been the advocate for college for the arts at my job. And there's a situation where most of our students have to prepare for a portfolio and go through all the different hoops and things to get accepted, because a lot of our colleges are hard to accept. But a lot of these pay-for-profit colleges just say, "Come on in. You don't need any requirements. Matter of fact, we give you scholarships, and then the key phrase or the key word is, or that key phrase is, you can stay on campus. You don't have to stay with your parents anymore. When when the students see that, they're like, oh. And I think the clues that they should have been looking at, if you're going to go to the school for the arts, why are you getting a Bachelor of Science degree? That kind of stuff. They're really, I think, I mean, they're still doing some of it, but it's not as much as they used to, because Brother Alexander said, they're facing all these lawsuits. So I'm one of the main guys that, hey, tell people, just because it's easy to get in, don't mean that it's the best thing to do. Just look at the track record. And that was it, y'all. But I appreciate seeing this panel like this, and we need more panels and material like this too. But I appreciate
All right,
it, you guys.
thanks for stepping through, Art Newstall. We'll get Citizen Lou in, and then I'll wind it down. What say you, Citizen Lou? Thanks for coming up.
Oh, no problem. This is a good conversation. Salute to you, brothers. I just wanted to stop by real quick. I know you're about to shut it down. I think when it comes to like DeVry and these other like for-profit colleges, here's my philosophy on it. I think that the people who go to these schools are either really, really unprepared or really, really clever. It's kind of like if you're already in whatever kind of field you want to get into, whether if you got there by boot camp or certifications, I think a lot of them go to these schools to kind of just get that stamp on their resume so they can just kind of go ahead and just, be in that field. And another thing too, I think that the squeaky wheel kind of always gets the oil. Because like you said earlier, they do just, from what I've seen, they do just kind of let people in with no type of, sorry about that barking. They just let people in with no type of, remedial tests, computer tests, math skills. They just kind of just let you on in. If you got money, let them on in. So I think that's that's very bad. But a lot of what you would call not like University of Michigan, like Brother Ray was saying, but a lot of schools that you would consider like not scammy kind of do that too. They kind of let people in and let you take remedial math or remedial reading, and they kind of let you on in, and they take your money as well. Does that make sense what I'm saying, brother?
Well,
Yes.
I hear what you're saying on that. Go ahead, Dr. Dunbar.
No, I was just saying I understood. Go ahead, Ray.
Yeah, the issue is that they're targeted. They're targeted by these for-profit schools in these communities selling them a dream, whereas they can get a more affordable education at community college, at state-supported technical schools where they can go and not get into very much debt, where these state-supported tech colleges will actually be partnered with the various industries. And so when you come out of that, you're in. Even if you're in the industry as a help desk clerk or whatever, and you're trying to advance yourself, the for-profit schools, that's a lot of money for a basic degree that can't be transferable anywhere. And they talked about, you might have missed the PBS the strip that Dr. Dunbar played, where the 130 campuses were closed. They were sued by the Federal Trade Administration. So the states have technical colleges that they sponsor, that they have people who are well trained, and generally they work with industry to get the skill sets that are needed in that area. So if you're studying information technology for like Gwinnett Tech in Georgia, then more than likely the businesses in that area, in that suburb, are needing people who are systems analysts. They're needing people and they are working with those industries because they got to get results. But as you said, these open enrollment for profit schools, they take everybody in, and at the end of it, probably 20% graduate with a degree that can't be transferred, that's not really well respected anywhere. So that's how that goes. And it's not really, it's a business pretending to be a university. So that's the problem that I have with those schools.
But that's what I wanted to bring up real quick. I think they're all businesses.
Well, I hear you on that point, but they're not all such traded on the New York Stock Exchange or NASDAQ
That's
for
true.
shareholders to maximize profit. So what you have is that you have to get a quarterly profit at the expenses of poor Black kids who are trying to advance themselves, and there's no accountability to help them get to that point. But when we see kids going to Florida A&M, when we see them going to Southern U A&M, when we see them going to North Carolina A&T, I can tell you that companies go to those schools looking for Black computer scientists, engineers, and they employ them at a high level, and they're doing a great job. But they don't even go to these what are considered fake colleges. And the only time they get jobs is at the bottom tier. They're stuck in the dungeon. They might be a quality assurance engineer, or quote engineer unquote, or a help desk analyst for 15 years. But if that's what they want to do, there's a cheaper way to do that. You can go to community college and get an associate degree for probably less than $5,000 over 4 semesters, rather than borrow $30,000 at one of these for-profit schools and end up in the same place and be in that kind of debt. So that's what I was discuss. That's the points I wanted to make.
Okay. Well, gentlemen, we're up on an hour and 15 minutes, so I want to wind this one down. I have to get ready for another one. But if you have any parting comments, you're welcome to state those right now. Lou, you can go first if you have something else.
Okay, yeah. Brother Ray made some good points. I tend to lean that way too. I just kind of, from my experience, that's why I wanted to ask Ray. Have you worked with anybody from a for-profit school? Because I've worked with people from San Diego State University, Stanford University, and it just, because I'm a programmer, right? And it just seems like a lot of times it's not necessarily where you come from. It's just the person's aptitude, how much time they put into what they do. That's all I was going to say. I was wondering, have you worked with anybody from a for-profit school or know of anybody?
If we work for them on that, Lou, what happens? They usually are at the bottom tier. Most of our software is licensed through Accenture and Deloitte. When those people come through there, they are degreed, usually have master's degrees from major universities. When people who work on the help desk or work at the lower tier in basic system controls or quality assurance, they come from those lower tier schools, and they don't tend to advance very much. But when we come in and have to relicense every 3 years, we're dealing with people with master's degrees from the University of Texas, from the University of Virginia, Duke, Georgia Tech. They're coming from Deloitte, they're coming from Accenture, and they're making nice money. They're making 6 figures. They have bachelor's and master's degrees in computer information systems and things like that from mainstream universities. Those people tend not to come from for-profit colleges because those types of schools are not preparing people necessarily to operate at that level. And that's all I was saying. And when you're talking about aptitude, that's what Stanford has already done. They've already screened the best. Maybe 8% of the people that apply to Stanford get in. So they've already screened the best and the brightest. They have the top tier student, the top 5% of the different high schools, the college prep schools. So you have the best of the best already there. So when companies are going to Stanford, they know what they're getting. Just like one of the people that founded Google got his master's degree. One of the guys that started YouTube got his master's degree from Stanford. Cisco Systems was started by Stanford professors. So that education is fundamental. The guy who wrote the operating system initially, they called it down and dirty operating system for Mike way back. You may not remember that. He was a University of Michigan PhD grad. So these schools are very, very important, and we need more of us in these mainstream schools getting this mainstream information operating on that level, because to ignore that or just to deny the opportunities is not good. We need our kids in these schools, and for-profit schools just haven't been a good deal for our students.
All right, brothers. Well, I gotta go. I just wanted to touch on that topic real quick. So y'all have a good day, man, and try to catch you on the next one.
Thank you, Citizen Lou. All right, Ray, is there anything else you want to say before we sign off?
Yeah, excellent show. I really enjoyed it. I'm glad we got to go over this topic. Hopefully, a lot more people will understand the importance of higher education as Art, BGS, and yourself, and also respect the example. Like we said, we put some respect on your name because I'm proud of what you've done. I'm proud of the sacrifices that you made to be one of the few Black PhD graduates from the University of Michigan. This is major. This is something that we should celebrate, because this is very rare. You've overcome a lot of obstacles, and we need to celebrate you. And we need people like you, if you don't mind, to offer that guidance, because people who have not had that experience, people who have dropped out of high school and gotten a GED, or people who've dropped out of one semester of college, cannot give us a more thorough understanding about what those degrees can do for you. But you have people on YouTube who dropped out of high school and tell you that you don't need college. You have people on YouTube who completed one semester of college saying that you don't need to go to college because they're allegedly doing all these great and grand things. But I see you as a highly competent, high functioning, high value man with a PhD from the University of Michigan. And we need more brothers to see what you're doing and aspire to accomplish those types of goals. We don't have enough Black male college graduates, and I'm proud of you, Dr. Dunbar, and I'm proud to be associated with you, and keep up the great work.
Well, thank you, Ray. I really, really appreciate that, and I appreciate the respect that and the love I've received in this sector. That was in large part why I started this channel, because I think that the things that I experienced and my skill set and even the challenges culturally, I think that these are things that I need to share to the world. I also think, going back to what you just said, I think that I also want to, we kind of have a dual thing going on here, where there's the traditional route of getting degreed, but also there are people who are getting certified and writing things like blockchain, who are establishing careers without getting degreed. So I think we need to have the entire discussion, because today's world is not the same as it was 20 to 30 years ago. But I appreciate your words on what I've accomplished, and also what I'm doing here. So, all right, everyone. Thank you for those of you who watched. Thank you for those of you who liked the stream, and thank you once again, MLR, for that Cash App. I will probably look at this again and clip some of what was said into smaller individual pieces. And also, I want to make an announcement. I see Nameless is in the chat. Nameless and I are planning to have a discussion about epigenetics. We had a little dialogue about that on the Roger Report. It was either yesterday or Thursday, but we're planning on doing that. That's going to be a fun one. But in any case, I'm going to wind this one down. I'm having an open basketball hangout on my sports channel in about 30 minutes. So if anyone wants to participate in that, please come on over. But in the meantime, if you're watching this on the playback, please like, share, and subscribe if you haven't. This channel is right at 700. It's 779 when I last checked. So if this one can get to 1,000, I think that would mean a lot, because we're talking about some very, very important stuff over here. So, all right, everyone, enjoy the rest of your Saturday. And as always, remember that your attitude determines your altitude. Take care, and I'll talk to you the next time. By the way, if anyone has more ideas or has ideas about the kinds of things you want to hear over here, reach out to me and let me know. So I don't know everything, and science and STEM is vast. So I'm open to learn, and I'm open to having other experts come in and talk about their fields. So enjoy the rest of your afternoon, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.
All right. Take
See you,
care,
Ray.
everyone. All right.